Supersport United, they have every reason to prevent their visitors from doing so, needing just a point to preserve their top flight status. It is a truly unique situation. It does require a little bit of context. A game back in February, suspended after a bout of load shedding, saw the lights go off at this very venue here, the Lucas Moripe Stadium. Could not continue that same night, and no plan could be drawn up for the match to conclude in the days that followed. The rest of the campaign has been completed. Every single side has finished their Betway Premiership obligations, other than these two. And the lay of the land means that Supersport United find themselves in 15th, the promotion relegation playoffs, needing just a point to move themselves level with Cape Town City, but to go ahead of the Citizens on goal difference. As things stand after the first 45 minutes played, it is 1-1. Goals scored by Christian Saile and Felimseni Ndwandwe. Interestingly, neither of the goal scorers are present today. Both are injured. Ndwandwe, in fact, over the weekend suffered a horror injury, broke his leg, or fractured his tibia rather. But for the most part, their teams have been mandated to try and restore their lineups to the 11s from February, barring instances, of course, where it's not possible. So Supersport United's lineup reflects 2 changes from 3 months ago. Lungu and Saile have had their medical reports submitted to prove they are injured. Tulani Tlatraya and Lyle Lakay were on the bench on that original team sheet. They are now into the lineup. Krobla and Matlangu were not in the original matchday squad, but they are now drafted in as replacements. In terms of from their most recent match, the defeats against Richards Bay, they have made 5 changes, or at least there are 5 changes that have been made. So someone like Samir Nukovic last started on the 11th of March. That is a dynamic you're going to see all over the park for both sides. Players who have not played in quite some time, but who have had to be restored to the 11. It's more pronounced when you come to Lamontville Golden Arrows, who recently raided Royal AM and have been using a lot of those newly recruited players of late. Let's look at their lineup. There are also 2 alterations for them from February's 11. Bongani Mcele and much more recently, of course, Felimseni Ndwandwe sustained injury. So they're replaced by Nkobeko Dlamini, who wasn't even in the original squad, and Angelo Van Roy, who started on the bench here in Attridgeville 3 months back. Now, it's a unique situation, and I'm privileged to be joined by William Shongwe, who will do his best to try and provide some clarity and context on what we are about to see here from a Cape Town City perspective. Of course, they will be on the edge of their seats, but also slightly perturbed by the fact that Supersport United come into the second 45 knowing precisely what they need to do, and that is to get a draw, which shouldn't necessarily be the case. All teams should finish their final matches on the same day.
Biggest worry that you might not have been able to experience is being a Supersport United player, or even Cape Town City for that matter. The stress that comes with being in this position. I remember 1987, I had a stomach ache. My chest was painful the night before the final game. We were winning the league. That's how stressful. So I can imagine how worse it is then for these 2 sides. I'm talking City and Supersport in this match. These players might have had very little sleep. I mean, in the field, in the stands, we got some family members that are here to watch and obviously are praying hard to make sure that the Supersport pulls through.
Worth pointing out, of course, that neither of the men in the dugout leading these teams are the same men that were here in February. Gavin Hunt has since departed. His understudy, Andre Arendse, now in the hot seat. That game 3 months ago was Gavin Hunt's 1,000th in the top flight, when an ignominious end to it. Here are the permutations for today's match. Supersport United have a superior goal difference to Cape Town City. That means that if they can join them on 27 points, they will go above them on goal difference. For Lamontville Golden Arrows, technically, they can join Richards Bay, who are in 8th position on 33 points. But the probability is extremely low because they would need to get a whole host of goals. In fact, they would need 5 to win by a margin of 5, not 6 unanswered. They are currently on a -12 goal difference. Richards Bay on -7. But simply by getting their goal difference better, they would have scored goals, and they would have scored more goals than Richards Bay, meaning that they only need to join them on -7 goal difference. So they need a margin of victory of 5 goals. But I would say that is highly unlikely in just the 45 minutes that remain. You see a familiar face in the stands.
GB and Caetano Tembo.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for you to spot.
But the light, or short guy, the white guy in front there is Kobas, who's like the physical conditioning coach at Supersport, has been there for decades, and obviously also is one of those that is praying hard to see if Supersport can pull through.
Well, Supersport in that original lineup fielded a back 4. Now with Tyson Latroyo drafted in, it is a back 5 or back 3 if you like. Debele alongside Ime Okon and Latroyo. So we are resuming now halfway through what is their 48th league meeting in the PSL era between these two sides, and the stakes are incredibly high, more especially for Supersport United. Nico Mobia, who has been an ever-present for the side this season, asked to go one more time. The man in charge, who we await his whistle now, is Siabulela Unta, as it was in February. In fact, the officiating quartet is entirely unchanged. Kamayolo Ramatindela and Romario Piri are running the flanks. Ricardo Goss has was not in the last lineup, but Takasani and Banjwa started. Ricardo Goss, of course, Arrow's development player, so whenever he comes up against Abafana Bestende, a little bit of a extra incentive for him to do well.
You got to be impressed with what you see as far as bombs and the stands are concerned. Grant, very impressive. I mean, to think this game is being played like noon, and most people are still pretty much at work around this time. But it's buzzing.
Good claim from Goss, man who left Lamontville Golden Arrows now about 8 years ago, departed in 2017 after not getting much game time, having come through their development ranks. Gladwin Chitolo and Samir Nukovic collide in the air.
Chitolo is another ever-present in that Golden Arrows starting lineup. The more experience of the lot.
But he's alongside Keenan Phillips, who hasn't started in a while. The arrival of someone like Ayanda Diani, for example, has seen him resign to a little less game time. His last start midway through April in a 1-1 draw against Gallant. So it's been over a month since he's been in the 11.
And Phillips, for those that will care to remember, of course,
former Supersport,
former Supersport United development player, graduating to the first team.
In fact, he's at the development of Wits and then Supersport before getting his senior start. Piwa Baliti helping it forward. Also perhaps another factor to consider, although it is late in autumn now and not particularly blazing at midday. This is rather uncharacteristic, a 12 o'clock kickoff. Some of these players will be recalling their BDC days.
Yeah, indeed. And for those that care to know as well, is that, you know, the time that you train is the usual time that you normally get to play your game. So the body gets accustomed to those conditions. And this, I'm not sure just how much time would have been applied by the two clubs to help the players adapt to this afternoon or early afternoon time for the start off. It does affect the performance. So there's a lot of other aspects that are involved, but depending on what the coach did in preparation for that, I think it always gives you an edge if you go further into the details on how you can help the team perform better. But Arrows, once again, they've had to push that ball forward. They've been happy to keep it defensively, something a little unusual. They're a team that likes to play through the middle, but today happy to just recycle it beautifully in that defensive part of the field.
Of course, Arrow's style of play more suited to absorbing pressure for a team that's actually actively pushing for a goal. And if Supersport United are saying that they will settle happily for the draw here, it would leave less space available for Arrows to exploit and to do what they do best. Although that's a nice little back heel by Sibeko, living up to the team's name as they get it forward now. A couple of plays inside the 18-yard area. Severe touch back, and then a rather wasteful effort from long range, although he's perhaps trying to emulate what he did over the weekend in Nhlanhla Zwane, who scored half a dozen goals or so in the National First Division, but had hit the net in the top flights until the game against Skukuni this past weekend. Scored an absolute wonder goal, although there are a few question marks over whether he meant to put it in the top corner from range or whether it was a cross.
This is what happens. You score one goal, suddenly the appetite of scoring goals develops. I guess he's in that same form. And his scoring is not strange, like you mentioned. He scored in the First Division. So he's a player that has an eye for goal, coming from deep in the middle.
He's been deployed up front as the top man a few times by Angola community this season. Nhlanhla Zwane. Especially Ndlovu is down. He is the player in the division who has suffered the second most fouls. Only Daniel Msendami from Marumo Gallants has been fouled more often than Ndlovu in the Betway Premiership this campaign.
Yeah, it will be a bit difficult to actually have judged her on to a foul because he jumps. It's just that Ndlovu is just in front of him. And for him to get that leverage, unfortunately those knees ended up into the back of Ndlovu. But luckily he seems to be up.
Laleke with the delivery. And the flag up for an offside against Tyson Hlachua.
It's a high ball, comes into the area, goalkeeper decides to stay. And I thought maybe because the length of time that it took the ball to get into the box, Watenga might have had a first option to come out, but preferred to stay.
Touch from Sibeko. Player back at Lamontville Golden Arrows, having left the club after a good youth career at Sabafana Bestende, has come full circle. Had things gone slightly differently over the weekend, Arrows would have had more of a shot of reaching the top 8, although so many factors would have had to go in their favour. They did what they needed to do, that win over Skukuni United. denying Skakuni third place, because had they got the victory, with Stellenbosch drawing with Cape Town City, although that might have changed had Stellenbosch been aware of Skakuni winning at the Princess Magogo Stadium, where it was clear at the DHL Stadium that they took their foot off the pedal when they knew that Arrows were in front and that Skakuni were down to 10 men. That was another significant factor in that game. Of course, Sean Mogaila dismissed after putting in the challenge that fractured Philip Ndwandwe's leg. Now, pandemonium in the box, but eventually loops up tamely for Ricardo Goss to claim.
She'll take a mistake like that, or just a situation of a ball that bobbles into the area and nobody is picking up from a Supersport point of view, and somebody top pocks it, and then that changes the picture altogether from a situation where Supersport would have been happy just to maybe sit and make sure all is covered defensively. So when it changes, it always depends on what kind of a plan did you have beginning of the match. That should you concede, are you ready to chase a game now?
Already 2 goals scored in this game, although 3 months ago. Over the course of their previous meetings, including the 2 goals in this match, 130 scored in their top flight meetings at a rate of just under 3 goals per game. And we have seen that in 8 of the past 10 meetings between these 2 sides, there has been a winner. Arrows winning 6 of those, Supersport United 2. Has been Arrows of late that are the slightly more dominant side, although overall, since their first meeting in September of 2000, it is Supersport United with 21 wins and Lamontville Golden Arrows with 16 in the league. Now Nukovic can't hang on to possession. Look at Lamini giving it away for Lungelo Dube. So for example, someone like Dube last started a match on the 1st of March. So that's that dynamic we were talking about, William, where there's some players who've had to be drafted back into the team after long absences.
And how ready are they?
Yeah,
to be able to perform at this level. Remember, this comes with fitness level, lack of fitness levels, means lack of sharpness and endurance. It's only 45 minutes, but you got to make sure that that 45 minutes is used effectively, and which I think is going to be a big challenge for these players to bring that to mind that day. We don't have a second 45 minutes here. We're going to try and waste as much as we have into this game.
Yeah, and Lovo drawing another foul. Arrows currently winless in their last 4 games on the road, 2 draws and 2 defeats. Actually, the longest they've gone without victory this season. That's in terms of away games. And historically, their record in Gauteng has never been particularly good. They've won only 6 of their previous 36 away games against Gauteng sides in the league. They often have good success against Kaizer Chiefs. 3 of those 6 wins over that aforementioned period have been against Tamakosi. Mabwe gets there first, laying it off for Ndlovu, lofting it forward. Watenga claims. That's another. Ismail Watenga has played just 1 of the last 9 league games, so another player that's obligated to play today, but under different circumstances would likely have been Maova. Shot from Sabir, blocked away. Ndlovu for Supersport.
Something just to bring into the situation, just to explain how bad Supersport have been since that day when they played Arrows and the game was abounding. They've only won just 1 game. That for me just speaks volume of how bad this team has done in this second part of the season. That was, of course, even before Gavin Hunt left, which is the reason why he left. Things weren't happening, things weren't cooking, but there was no change of fortunes even after he left.
Well, their lowest ever finish in a campaign in the PSL era was in 1997-98. They finished 14th, but you have to remember then there were 18 teams in the division. And regardless of the result today, they are set for their lowest ever points tally in a 30-game season. That's in the PSL era since the 2002-2003 season, when the league was reduced to 16 teams. So it has been a truly dismal campaign from a Matsatsan's perspective, but I'll be hoping they can get the job done here and just put that behind them.
Golinora's players remained out after that clash with Nurkovic.
Glenn Chitola seems to be indicating that they may need an early change here. Nurkovic landing heavily on the knee of Spunelo Tele, who scored a sublime free kick against Skokuni United over the weekend. The first game this season in which 2 direct free kicks have been scored in a single game, and only the second instance in the last 8 years that a top-flight game in South Africa has seen 2 direct free kicks scored. Here are the available replacements for Lamontville Golden Arrows. They might have to do a little bit of a tinkering at the back.
Even before Kale went down, those players were already warming up, and you've got to understand, it'll be a surprise to see a coach wanting to make early changes, but this is a 45 minutes game. That you have to think about.
Ndlovu comes away with it as Nurkovic in support, and he's hit it straight at Watenga. Yeah, would he have been better served squaring that? And I think the man he dispossessed is the man I was speaking about earlier, who's had very, very little game time, and that's Lungelo Dube. Dallied on the ball.
That was the reason, yeah, he picks it up.
Poor touch.
And now look at the possible cross there. I think Nurkovic was running in the shadow of a defender, which might
put him off.
From bring the ball across the face of goal.
For Dube. Ndlovu backed himself. He's been one of the bright sparks in this poor Supersport season as Fiwe Baliti goes down.
Yeah, he gets caught as he makes it clear. Yeah, Spego was a little offside there. It was clear that he was never going to get there. He left the leg a little bit higher, and there's a change made.
Yeah, change. That's Stugazani Lukele who's come on here for Spunelo Tele. So the alterations that were made to the original 11, because medical reports were submitted, those don't count as subs. Each team can still make 5 substitutes in this second period, and Arrows have made the first of theirs. There's the K. On paper, this Supersport United side has no business going down or even being close to the relegation places, but that is the situation here, as I think Sibeko gets a little bit of a rough one, not from Baliti, but perhaps as a recompense for the earlier incident.
I hear you about Supersport. You know, it's like a little bit of a surprise that they find themselves here. But I think you got to agree as well that the league has become very competitive. It's not so easy anymore. So it's credit to the level of the standard of the football in this country that any other team, which is, I think, has helped to actually push the standard higher. There's a whole lot more available players, even for the coach of the national team to pick. There's youngsters that are coming in, filling the team with quality.
Because you could say the same about Cape Town City and the quality they have.
Exactly.
By the way, national team that will be in action in Bulawayo on the 6th of June will be trimmed down to a 23-man squad from 41. There's a lot of new faces in it, so interested to see who's retained and who's dropped. Phillips challenging Nokovic. Supersport have lost their last 2 home games in a row. They've also had to play out in Bulawayo at the Peter Mugabe Stadium as Nokovic got to latch onto that one all the way through to Smawatenga. And of a side who, over the past few seasons, have been so good at home and not so long ago went through the campaign unbeaten at home. They have just 4 wins this season, and 3 of those have been very narrow, just a 1-0 scoreline. The only exception, a 2-0 victory over Chippa United, which is their only win in their last 9 home games. I'm still thinking about that point you made about the quality of the league has been elevated and the standard of young players that are coming up. It just seems to be a little higher. And Richards Bay, over the weekend, ran Supersport United ragged and were full value for that 2-0 victory. I mean, the permutations were certainly not in the Natal Rich Boys' favour in terms of getting into the top 8. So many different things needed to happen. Those things did happen, and I think Richards Bay would have been kicking themselves if they had not capitalised and had just drawn and seen, oh, we had an opportunity to get in the top 8, but as it was, they got the victory, and a good one at that. The second goal, in fact, both goals. Batuma's first, brilliant cross, the second, Batuma's backheel assist, and Gomete's finish. And credit to them for earning themselves their first top 8 place in what is their 3rd season in the top flight and improving drastically on their previous finishes, 13th and 15th and now 8th.
The unsung heroes of all that for me. Gabriel,
yeah,
the coach, and Jomo, that is Ngubane.
Yeah.
I think he hardly gets mentioned at this platform.
I didn't, yeah.
And then, and of course, Papi, leaving Magesi to join Richards Bay and finding himself in a very strong position to help the team contribute positively. Those are situations that are beautiful in our football, just to see young stars for me. Credit to Jomo, who is obviously Mr. Piela, the chairman of the club, giving these youngsters the opportunity to be able to grow. My question is, Bapindela nini Richards Bay? When are they going back to Richards Bay?
Well, apparently it may be sooner than we think.
Sure, the people from that region are starving of football. They travel every Sunday to watch their home games.
Referring to the Platuza Sports Complex, which has been undergoing some renovations for quite some years now.
A little bit naughty once again from Tehran into the same player. Go.
I think we expected this. It's come the 68th minute, but technically 20 or so minutes into this resumption, Bradley Krobler now on for Sumir Nukovic.
As often as he does, when he comes in, obviously maybe 70th, 80th minute.
So he usually plays 20 or so minutes.
Yeah.
And that's what they thought, let's get that out of him, and we make that change.
And from what you've seen in the past, when he comes in, he makes a big impact positively by scoring the odd goal that Supersport is going on to collect 3 points from.
It's a lovely leap from Krobler. Yeah, a couple of times this season where he's scored late goals, late winners. The reverse against Richards Bay, about this defeat they suffered over the weekend, but the reverse, Krobler scored in practically the last minute to win in that one. Okay, gets it back. Running here with Ndlovu. Ndebele all the way back to Goss. So they've navigated about half of this second half, Supersport, without conceding, which is precisely what they need to do. Scored 17 goals this season, Supersport United, or 18 if you now restore that Sale goal to their tally from this suspended match. Only Cape Town City, 15, have scored fewer goals, and this will be by far their lowest ever goal tally in the PSL era, which was previously 28 in 2017-18. They are approaching the period where usually they do a little bit better. Final quarter hour of matches, 75 minutes onwards, they've scored 5 goals in that period. That's 29% of all of their goals scored this season. But again, they don't necessarily need to net today. They just need to keep Arrows from scoring. And if Arrows score, they have to respond. Now, corner to come. Bradley Krobler feeding in Ndlovu. Golden Arrows will be making a change with Shantla Zwane departing. And you see the introduction here of Duduzo Mhlongo. Clear by Ndebele. Phillips meets it. Shitolo. Forward by Dube. Sibeko in pursuit. Latshoya on him. Will be another corner for Lamontville Golden Arrows. Have scored 4 times from corners this season, have Arrows. Supersport United have been fairly good at defending set pieces, which usually is a strength of theirs, although they supplement that strength with being very good offensively from set pieces, which has not been the case this season. Curled in, and Shitolo gets his head on that, and His follow-up shots, loops up a foot, takes some of the pace off it. Ricardo Goss has it in his clutches now.
We've seen very little of the players not clearing up that space in front of the goalkeeper. But yes, that deflection I think was good enough just to slow the ball down a bit, which allowed Goss to be able to pick it up.
Yeah, Angelo Van Roy
pressure
off his knee. Sometimes a ricochet, a deflection like that can take it away from the goalkeeper and loop it in, but that's not the case this afternoon.
Just as well that the shot wasn't that powerful to create a big deflection.
Lovely work from Lakeo. Robler tries to improvise. I think he got a touch off his heel maybe, but the ball just went skywards.
Hit hard across the face of goal. Really difficult for whoever is going to make do with it. But always having Robler running in that inside of the box. You know, in one of those touches he might make good of it.
Good defensive work initially there by Pochampul. Glovo takes over as Mabue. His father scored in the second ever meeting between these two sides in what was the biggest win for Supersport United.
Long time ago.
Yeah. The 5-1 winners they were. He got the second goal in that 5-1 victory for Supersport. That was back in early 2001.
It's 2 decades ago.
Indeed. Supersport actually won the first 3 games in a row between these two sides before Arrows eventually claimed victory. Krobler! Oh, that has skewed horribly off his boot.
Supersport are picking up the pieces, going a little bit more on the front foot. They're getting into the area. They're getting the balls into the box. The entry's much better. It's a question of time before Krobler finds the one that will matter.
If they can snatch a goal, that would mean that Arrows would need 2 in order to send Supersport United back into that promotion playoff spot. And we are in the final quarter hour now, where over the entirety of the season, Arrows have only scored 2 goals in the final 15 minutes of Premiership games, the 27 that have preceded this. So they're not particularly adept this campaign at getting one late, but to have a chance here potentially. Fairly poor touch from Van Roy. King Phillips down at the moment, receiving some attention. Sean Croxford is indicating that he may not be able to continue here. So this is what the log looks like as things stand. This is Supersport collecting 1 point, back above Cape Town City on goal difference. City left above them over the weekend, and they got a draw against Stellenbosch. In the meantime, Supersport opting to make a change, and it will be Spesitle Ndlovu who departs to a hearty round of applause here. And a young Tabang Mahlangu, the successful Amajita forward. Sibeko Sibia. Comes out for an Arrows throw. Lukele can't find a way past Lakay. Supersport United 3-0 loss to Arrows as Matoba Matlala watches on nervously. It's after a 3-0 loss to Arrows. It was at the Peter Makaba Stadium. That was in August of 2023. And then their loss to Richards Bay in their last match are actually the only home defeats that they've suffered against KZN sides across the last 13 league games against teams from that province. There's another look at Tabang Mahlangu. A nice physical presence up front for Amajita in their successful capture of the under-20 Africa Cup of Nations crown.
I like that introduction of Mahlangu because, you know, Robert is not going to hold that top line. He always playing into the shoulders of the field, but Mahlangu will definitely be able to hold that. So whenever long ball is played, he's more likely, as he does now, he pops into the attack. So a bit more presence for all the balls cleared from deep of Supersport.
So Arrows made one change already, but now they'll be implementing a triple swap here. Sabia, Dube and Phillips all making way. And you see the introduction here of Olwetu Nube, as well as Tikulen Kladi and Tilani Sitebe coming on. So, on an interesting day like today, Pilani Sitebe makes a first ever Lamontville Golden Arrows appearance. 22-year-old who joined from Royal AM.
Coming up.
Krobler has his head on that. And he's the next player to have an opportunity. It fell kindly back to him. Makes the foul on newly introduced Mube after the Arrows player had dispossessed him. Akon successfully shielding the ball out. Ube, Sitolo. Slid into the path of Lukele, goes down after a late challenge from Paliti. Yet to see a card brandished in this half, although the cards had remained from the previous half back in February, although those players have all been withdrawn, Phillips, Dube and Ndlovu. Perhaps specifically Ndlovu might have been a surprise to see him withdrawn, considering the kind of stability he adds to the middle of the park. But I would imagine that was because just couldn't risk him being sent off or going a man down. Ball forwards, the header from Lukele behind for a goal kick. And we have 5 minutes of regulation time remaining here. And Supersport United opting to make another change. Jape Moralo has seen a lot of game time recently. He will be watching that Bafana squad announcement closely. He was included in the 41-man preliminary team. Kobler has been imperious in the air since arriving on the park.
I must say that I'm very happy for us. You mentioned that there's not a lot that they're playing for here. There's a lot that they've done to secure their position as far as in the PSL. But the intensity with this they played with, they actually gave Supersport a lot to think about. That for me is honorable of errors. Though they don't have a lot to play for, but they're still putting in just about everything and making sure that they make a game out of this. You're not going to hand it over to Supersport in their platter.
Sitolo, the header forward. Well, he arrived to take Arrows to another level, and perhaps with the pre-season, Arrows can compete again in the coming campaign for a top 8 spot. Dlamini. Sit in between the two centre halves to just keep the ball moving. It's Stoller and then Lukele. Stab through neatly. Sibeko out wide. Sitebe pings it across field. Stoller. Well, there have been no goals, barely any stoppages. It'll be interesting to see how much additional time will be added here. We are about to enter into final minute of the 90. Andre Arendse is busting a vein in his forehead on the sidelines. He's screaming because players are left unmarked.
You got the numbers defensively, and yet you still got pockets of spaces and free white sets with no pressure on them. That obviously is a big concern for the coach. And now, I mentioned I was still doing so well to apply the right kind of pressure. I mean, they're actually holding a half ground now. The pressure on Supersport, and with only a minute of regulation time remaining, the concerns for Andre are justified.
So in comes a decent free kick, but lifted over the bar by Dlamini from very close range.
Yeah, I will be disappointed with himself. I mean, that ball was dropping beautifully. I guess the rush into the space with the pressure from defenders might have forced him to execute poorly. It was a decently taken set piece.
Confirmed now, 2 minutes of additional time, and we're already 30 or so seconds into it. Tochapol, a powerful header. Stoller to Lukele. Ube. Dlamini. Misplaced pass. Gamobia pounces on it. Mabue. Krobler waiting to receive, but Lukele intercepts. The commotion you can hear from the touchlines because there was an offside.
Yes, flag that was raised earlier.
Yeah.
And the ref didn't pick it up.
Nodded down by Krobler. Moralo applying some pressure. Supersport United throw in with just seconds remaining. And the final whistle sounds in Attridgeville. Wild celebrations from Andre Arendse. Well, it's been a terribly difficult campaign, but they get the job done.
What a relief, Andre. You can see it's been building up for the longest, and it is funnel out there. Mr. Arendse, you are safe now. You can go home and rest for the off-season.
Well, 5 days beyond what was officially the last match day in what has been a strange old season, with each club playing just 28 games. There have been a few firsts, shall we say, and this another. as a game started in February, finishes in May. Musa Bilankulu turned 40 on in the first half, and does he continue the celebrations today? Not quite sure, but in any case, his share of the spoils, both goals scored back in February. Saile and Ndwandwe, neither were present today. Stan Matthews breathing a huge sigh of relief, I'm sure. And Cape Town City watching on, no doubt, will probably have expected this outcome, considering that Lamontville Golden Arrows didn't have all too much to play for. And now we wait to hear when the rescheduled playoffs will take place. They were supposed to begin this past Tuesday with the second and third place Watsefe Foundation Championship clubs in action, Orbit and Kazrick, but that did not take place. It was supposed to